Thank you all for being here this morning. If you were not here last week, I will catch you up by telling you that I'm doing a series of the 4 chapters of which are the introduction to Science of Mind from the 1938 textbook. It's something that's been going on in this movement for decades, and I've not done it till now. So 25 years of ministry, and this is my first time to do this, and I'm actually enjoying it. So last week we talked about the thing itself, that's the first chapter, and understood the idea of how mind is actually the presence of the divine. And how Holmes when he refers to mind, he capitalizes it, and it's completely synonymous with the creative force of the universe. And that seems to work, but now we need to know a little more about it. We need to know how it works. And so this morning, that's what I want to share with you. I want to talk about this idea of how mind works. And we'll start with this idea that mind is individualized within all of us, but it's also completely one thing. And there is 2 parts of it we talked about last week, the conscious mind and the subjective mind. We don't call it the unconscious mind because there's nothing unconscious about it. It's just not, it's a storage system. It stores everything we experience. And let me give you an example as to the different ways that those 2 aspects of mind process. Your creative mind, through your creative mind, you can do about 5 to 7 thoughts a second. Whoa, doesn't that sound like an amazing amount of information expanding? Well, your subjective mind can actually collect in that same 1 second about 2 million bits of information. Because your eyes are working, your ears are working, and your subjective mind, or the subjective mind, is collecting all of that all of the time. Everything is being collected. And I am figuring that somehow the collection of that information is what keeps the universe intact. Because that's all going into the mind of God. And it's creating perspectives of everything that exists through us and through every other living thing. So that's pretty powerful that all that's going on, but it shows you that the 2 minds kind of work differently. They work in tandem, but they do not do the same thing. So understanding how life works is going to require us to actually look at these different aspects of mind and kind of apply them to this. So there's something else important here that I wanted to share. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh, yeah, I wanted to say that this whole idea of forgetting is not part of the subjective mind because none of that information is ever lost. It's always there. Yet there are times when we can't remember something. Well, that's a glitch in our conscious mind that we're not able at some moment to access it. It doesn't mean it's not there. And the way I can prove that is that many studies have been done with hypnosis, where people that could not remember things suddenly under hypnosis could remember every detail there was about it. To the point where they can barely remember that there was a car in a particular scene, but when they're under hypnosis, they can tell you what the license tag number is. It's that different. So all that information is always there. And it's always available to us if we're open to receiving it. And that's sort of how mind works. Mind works, the way I like to describe it is that mind works through a series of filters. And the filters are actually, I think, part of our conscious mind. They're like sentries at the doorway of your thinking, of your mind. So just a very rudimentary graphic to get a sense of that is, if all those little bars that are sitting there were actually mental filters in your mind, they are reviewing everything you're experiencing. And the way that works is that each one is like a belief. You have these certain beliefs about the way things are, and when something shows up that's different than you believe or different than you with what you agree to in your life, it kind of makes alarms go off. It's like the filter gets it and bounces it back to you, the information that you believe. You see, you can't. If I asked you to take a piece of paper and write down all of your beliefs, you couldn't do that. You have thousands of them. They're only accessible when they're challenged. or when they're presented again. And you go, yep, I agree with that. But often it happens that we disagree with what's being said because we have a filter that says otherwise, a belief that says otherwise. And you go, that's not true. That doesn't work for me. Everybody's done that, I'm sure. That's how we interact. We agree with certain things. We disagree with certain things. So it's when something shows up that we disagree with that it kind of bounces back on us like that. So that's when we remember what we believe. It's only valuable in that moment. And if we had to remember everything all the time that is in our subjective mind, it wouldn't work. So we've got these filters. And these filters are very helpful in us organizing our thoughts. But they have certain ways that they work. 3 in particular that I want to share with you. And so these are the ways mental filters work. First one is deletion. Now what you do is you're deleting from your conscious mind 99.9% of the stuff that you experience. Because you're not going to hold on to it. What are you going to do with it? You're going to let it go. It's all going to go into subjective mind. It's not going to go away. It's going to be there. But it will not be available to you in your conscious mind unless you go looking for it. And most of it's just put away and will never come back up. That's the process of deletion. The next way is to generalize. Because remembering all the details that pass through our mind all the time, it would be impossible to remember all that detail. I mean, I hear there are some people that can do that can read a book and remember what was on page 42 in the second chapter. I can't do that. And I'm sure that most people can't. But generally what we do is we generalize. And we remember things that we think are important, and we let the rest go. And it sits idly in subjective mind. Okay, that's the generalization. And then the final one is distortion, my favorite. This is how distortion works. You have an experience, something happens, probably a dramatic experience, a car accident, an argument, something happens, and it was kind of traumatizing. Well, you've got this memory, and it's really there in your thinking, and you know it's on your mind. And so, what do? You tell somebody about it. This terrible thing happened, and blah, 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 and you tell them all that you remember about it. Great. So then you think about it some more. And as you're thinking about it, the things that are important about it, you expand on. And it's not just me, it's everybody does this. We expand on it. We get a little more detail. And the thing about subjective mind is it does not know the difference between an actual experience and an imagined experience. So when you go, and then this thing happened, and it was kind of bigger, the fish story, that kind of stuff, it's bigger in your mind, so it comes out to the next person you tell the story to, that this is what happened, and they go, oh my goodness, so you got some affirmation that what you're telling them about is worth talking about. So what happens, it grows a little bit more and you tell the next person. 10 years later, you're telling a story that doesn't really resemble at all what happened, but you can't remember it otherwise because in your subjective mind, those changes that you made become the reality. And you don't remember how it was any different. We all do it. It's called distortion. Okay, so those are the 3 things that filters will do as you're putting information away in subjective mind. And so where I want to go with this is the idea that these filters, I've got a quote from Holmes, and that's, I guess, where we're going next. Here we are. Ignorance of the law excuses no one from its effects. Ignorance of the law excuses no one from its effects. If then certain specific ways of thought and belief have produced limitations, other beliefs will change them. This is really important to know because you have these mental filters, these beliefs that you're holding on to. Most people would have no idea how to change that. In fact, they would argue with you to hang on to their limitations because that's the way it is. But it's not. It's whatever way you want it to be. So he says that you can change them. That's his last thought here. You can change these beliefs. And that's incredibly valuable information that you can change them. So you can change these filters. And that's what I want to offer you today, is some ways to change these mental filters so that you're not stuck with the burden of having a belief that is no longer working for you. Now, you have to be open to it. You have to want to do this. And it doesn't happen just with clicking a button. It's something you have to do consciously. And you have to do it over and over and over again to get a different result. By doing it over and over again, you're actually materializing it into your thinking so that that will be the filter instead of the filter you've had all along. And we'll just start with our filters. The fear filter, probably a good one to start with. We all have fear of certain things. And fear is always attached to a projection of the future. We are never afraid of the past. And you may say, well, that's not true. I'm afraid of somebody finding out about that thing that I did 10 years ago. You're not afraid of the thing that happened 10 years ago. You're afraid of somebody finding it out in the future. Always attached to the future. Any fear. So we're looking and dealing with fear in our lives, and it comes up pretty readily. Because we have this major filter, so that when something comes up about something that could happen in the future, we're stuck in a place of being afraid of it. And the problem with that is that we work it. We work that idea that something bad's going to happen. I really don't want this to happen, but boy, it sure feels like it's going to happen. We end up thinking about it while we lay in bed at night. We tell people about it, that this bad thing could happen, or somebody suggested it was going to happen, or I have a premonition it's going to happen. However it works, when you work it like that, it's like you're bringing it to yourself. You know, it's like wearing a big neon sign on your forehead that says, "Mess up my day." And even though we keep saying we don't want it, by being afraid of it, by having that thing go through that filter, hit that filter, we're holding on to it. So we need to do something else. Now, I'm not saying that we can get rid of that instant thought where we go, oh, but we can have a different way of dealing with it. We don't have to stay in the fear. And the way that would be is to turn it into a possibility filter. So what does that mean? Well, we have this idea that something bad could happen. If we replace that by recognizing there's all kinds of things that could happen. There's all kinds of possibilities. And I'm focused only on the one I don't want. What if I were to actually focus on some possibilities of what could happen that I would want? Wouldn't that change the direction, the trajectory of that experience? I think it absolutely would. So that when we recognize that just because something we don't want could happen does not mean it has to happen. And it does not mean that we have to, well, that's the next one. It doesn't mean that we're going to get stuck in that fear and bring that to us. Whereas if our focus is possibilities, it opens us up to any number of things that could happen instead that would be more pleasant. And when we focus on that, there's a much greater chance that that's what's going to happen than the thing we were afraid of. So we go with possibilities instead of fear. That's the first one. Control filters, because everything works better when we control it, right? You've probably figured out that's not true. In fact, it's pretty well understood in the field of psychology that controlling things does not guarantee success. In fact, it often guarantees that you're not going to be successful because you're controlling it for fear that something you don't want is going to happen. So instead of being trying to be in control of things, which really is impossible, we cannot control all conditions. We certainly have the ability to influence our lives, but the idea of trying to control everything is not the answer. I would suggest, as Holmes does, that there is no mental coercion in knowing good. We do not will things to be done. Things are brought into being not by will, but by the power of the self-assertive truth. What is the self-assertive truth? Truth is truth. Truth is recognizing the presence of the divine. Truth is recognizing the good in your life. And to do it Self-assertively means that you're claiming that truth, you're knowing that truth, you're living according to that truth, rather than trying to control conditions by forcing everybody to be the way you want them to be, or to do the thing you want them to do, or that everything in your life has to be lined up a particular way. And I'm talking to myself here for sure. The idea is in knowing something beyond this need to control. And how do we do that? Well, we go from control filters to certainty filters, being certain that only good is going to come from this. And even though it may not look exactly like you imagined it, it's really okay. Being certain that what's happening is okay. Even on the hard days, God's still in the midst of it all. There's only good, there's only God. It's all good, it's all God. However you want to say it, however you want to know it, believing that will take you to a better place than trying to micromanage everything that's going on. So we let go of control and we look for certainty and we claim that certainty. That is the self-assertive truth, is in certainty. All right. Next one is have-to filters. This is the one I learned from Barbara. We all have them. I have to do it. I have to go there. I have to deal with this. I have to do this, that, and the other. No, you don't. You say you have to because you're limiting yourself again to one outcome, one circumstance, one action. And that's never the way it is. However, that may not be the way to change it. The way to change it may be to simply, rather than having to do it, is getting to do it. And to have get-to filters, so that when you're faced with something that maybe isn't your favorite thing to do, still, it's a blessing in your life that you get to do anything. So call it a get-to. I get to do this. I get to take care of that paperwork. I get to pay this bill. I get to go to the store. Whatever it is, stop having to as though life is pushing you and making you do something, to being absolutely a choice and saying that you get to do it. And that it's all good. Better plan, right? Fairness filters. I think we all have these. It's where we go, oh, that's not fair. How did they get to do that? I don't get to do that. It's not fair. Why did this happen to me? It's not fair. So many ways we want to go to fair, though that's the answer, that life is fair. Listen to me. Life is not fair. It's not made that way. It's not equitable. We don't all get the same thing. We don't all have the same experience. We create our experiences. So blaming a lack of fairness on where you are is just going to put you in a rat race of not getting anything better. So let go of fairness. Fairness will not serve you. Fairness needs to be replaced with trust. So that even when something looks like you don't want it to look, you're able to trust that everything is unfolding the way it needs to. You're able to know that the presence of the divine still dwells at the point of view, and that everything in your life has value and meaning, and that the joy of your life is still there, even if what's happening doesn't completely match your model picture of the way you'd like it to be. It doesn't matter about fairness. Life's not fair. But you can trust that the presence is always with you, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And by doing that, you're always in a mode to have something better. Claiming that you didn't get treated fairly will not give you anything of value. So go with trust on this one. Personalizing filters. This is when somebody judges you. Somebody tells you you're wrong. Somebody tells you you're fat or you're stupid or whatever cruel things people say to one another. Whatever it is, the problem is that inside of you, when you hear criticisms of yourself or someone laughs at you or something of the sort, it goes in and you cringe and you crumble and you feel little and you don't know how to get out of that. You feel worthless. All those thoughts come from personalizing things that other people say or do. And it's time not to do that. Holmes is very clear that we are not to fall into that trap, that doing that leads to things that we don't want. And it's a slippery slope. So instead of personalizing, how about empowering? So that when someone criticizes you, you go, no. The truth is that I'm wonderful. I'm powerful. I'm capable. And they got it wrong. When my son was 6 years old, I remember him coming home from school. And I could see that he was sad. And I said, what's going on? And he said, the kids at my school, they don't like me. I said, why do you think that is? And he said, well, I don't think they understand me. I thought, God, that was so wise, coming out of the mouth of a 6-year-old. So he gave himself a way to say, they just don't understand me. I'm not going to make them wrong or bad. I'm not going to go to war with them. I'm not going to hate them. I'm not going to run away from them. I'm just going to say they haven't quite got it yet. I'm okay. And any of us that can do that are going to find that we're not caught up in that thing of being unliked or feeling like we're an outsider. It doesn't have to be a part of who we are. So no more personalizing. Instead, we empower. And the final one, the opposite of personalizing, is blaming. And we all have done it. We all have had something happen in our lives, and we immediately go trying to find someone to blame because we don't want to lay this on ourselves. It must have been that thing that person did. It must be that they don't do things the right way. That must mean that they really just screwed this up, and I'm going to have to suffer the consequences. Yeah, what's that going to get you? Because in that moment, what you're not recognizing is the divinity of that other person. And the truth is that they did the best they could with what they knew at the time. You may not like the way they handled it, but they did not do that just to get you, even though it may look like that. And I've been in some of those circumstances where it really looked like that. But the truth is that everybody's handling life the best way they know how in the moment. So we want to get rid of our blaming filters and never blame anybody for anything. And instead, we want to reframe. Just like my 6-year-old did. To understand that things are okay. And even though that person said that thing or did that thing, or whatever the circumstance was, to not fall into the abyss of needing to blame somebody for it. It's okay. It's all God. So we just let it be what it is. So this idea of how mind works, how the creative force of the universe works, is that we get to be in charge of our experience. We do that in our conscious mind. We do that by how we process information. Your subjective mind doesn't care. It collects all the information. You are the one, I am the one, that puts a judgment on it, that puts some kind of a condition or a limitation on it, that keeps us playing a small game. So when we can shift these filters that are already established in our thinking, they've been there since we were kids, when we can shift that, and recognize that we're in charge, what we end up with is a better life. So it's true, Ernest Holmes really is coming up with a concept here that creates a better life. But you have to apply it. You have to recognize that the thing itself is a powerful, creative force of the universe. It is the force of the universe. And that it dwells at the point of you and me. And when we understand that, and when we live by that understanding, we can do something about it. We can change the way we're thinking, and we really can have the life that we want to live. And that gets us through chapter 2. And next time, we're going to talk about the next chapter, which at this moment has escaped me. But I will be really well-versed on it come next Sunday. All right. Thank you very much. I love you very much. Thank you.